Fractured Online is a top-down, hardcore PvP MMORPG with no classes, a full karma system of good and evil, and one of the most interesting leveling systems I think I've ever seen, where you learn your abilities and your spells by defeating the monsters that use them. The game re-released last week into early access to some very positive reviews on Steam, but it's had a pretty rough development cycle and still has some of its main features in development. So let's talk about Fractured Online, the good, the bad, and overall, if it's worth playing. Let's start first with the new player experience. So if you go to buy the game, it's available on Steam or it's available on their own launcher, which you can get on their website. And the game is £20 UK, which is like, what, $25? And it's a one-time purchase, so there's no subscription fee or anything like that. And I think that's quite good. That's quite affordable for an MMORPG. I've already put a ton of hours into this and it was well worth it. So I think that's pretty good. And then once you've got it, the first thing you do is make your character and you choose between one of the three races. There are humans, wild folk, and demons. And demons are still in development, set to release very soon. So right now you can pick between the wild folk or the humans. And the race you pick determines your morality, which is really important in this game. Humans can be good or evil if they have the free will to choose. Wild folk are naturally good and can't become evil, so you can't go red and start hunting down people and just randomly PvPing them. And then demons are pure evil and they can't be good. Once you pick your race, you pick some starting skills, a background, and you get a bunch of basic abilities. But this is a classless game. You could pick the gladiator starting background and then later on pick up some healing spells and become a paladin. You can become an archer and later on decide you want to be a rogue or respec into a mage. You really can do anything on one character and you can learn every single ability on one character. And this is where the new player experience gets a little strange, because as soon as you finish this, there's a basic tutorial, and as soon as you finish this like 20-minute tutorial, you're dropped into the world and that's it. If you've never played a sandbox game before, this is one of the most daunting ones. There is no story, no path, no goal, no explanation. There's some basic quests in a quest log like this is how you tame a horse, this is how you make armor, that teach you what to do in the game, and it's just go do whatever you want. While you're on this journey of adventure and discovery, you also have this young player bonus where you are unable to PvP or be PvP'd for your first 40 hours or until you hit your first 80,000 knowledge. And knowledge is just like your XP, so you get it every time you beat a monster. This can really help keep you protected while you explore and build out your character, but it can also be turned off if you just want to get straight in and you're feeling confident. As a lover of sandbox games, I love this free approach. Not having a long main story or having you on rails and your handheld for like the first 10, 20 hours. I think it's incredible just to say, have fun. If you've got a friend who's up north, you can go join them straight away. If you want to go and be a crafter, you can just go down to where all the resources are. You want to build a house in your first hour, you go for it. But yeah, I know a lot of people are going to be turned off by that if you're maybe new to sandbox games, so I wanted to mention it early on. So with this big open world and this free approach, what do you do? Well, let's get into it. I want to talk about the spells and abilities. This is the most exciting part of the game, and it's how you level up. There are no classes in Fractured Online, but you get stronger and develop in two ways. From gaining talent points, you can gain up to 60 talent points, and from building out that talent tree, and then from collecting new spells and abilities. And both of these are gained from just fighting enemies. There are zones all around the world that have different camps, like goblin camps, bandit camps, elementals, and for each of these, there are different enemies. So there are skeleton warriors in the graveyard that use really cool sword abilities. Bandits and goblins have lots of mages with them that have powerful magic abilities. So there's like a fire goblin shaman that has like totem magic and has like fireballs. And the more you fight these specific creatures, you level up that knowledge of that creature, and as you progress it, you learn more and more of their abilities. So it's a really cool way to play the game. And when you first start out and you think of a build, maybe you say, oh, okay, I want to play as a paladin or a necromancer, and you want to play as some hybrid thing that you think will be cool. You have to go into your spellbook, look at the abilities, and it will show you what monsters drop those things. So maybe you got to go find clerics as maybe like a skeletal mage, or there's like a necromancer somewhere, and you have to go and find those things and go on adventures with people and try and find these monsters and learn their abilities. And it's really cool because some drop from cool things, like there's dragon fire abilities that drop from fire dragons and ice dragons, and it just feels like a huge open world adventure to find the things, beat them, and learn the abilities. Animals also have abilities like swipes, charges, and stuff. So it's just really satisfying deciding what you want to play, hunting down those monsters, and filling out your character. Okay, next let's talk about the crafting and economy. This game is entirely player driven. There is basically no shopkeepers. Most towns are player owned and managed with their own taxes and rules, and they are where you will go to buy and sell your items on the market to other players. Some towns are rich in crystals and metals, and others in certain animal parts or upgrade materials. And banks are all locked to incentivize travel and the risk of traveling with those precious goods. You can set out as a solo player or with one friend and then go build a little house, claim a piece of land, build a house on it, and then build all the buildings inside and be able to craft your own weapons, armor, and sell those things in town and just be a player in this big world. Or you can join a big guild and take over a city. This lets you build houses inside, farms, build your own shops and buildings inside, and you can physically see all these things being built over time as people bring the resources in and build them up. With huge games like Final Fantasy XIV and World of Warcraft and these big MMOs where convenience is so easy now, playing a game like this, you can see the players, you can see the grind. It's all on one server and you can just feel the economy. You can feel things happening. You can see big guilds all riding in on wagons and carts together, bringing in these big hauls of items to build up their towns. And then you can see these red players and groups of red players hanging around waiting to steal these goods. The game feels incredibly alive. You can see the economy, you can learn what's selling, you can make money, you can make your own way, you can become a master crafter and sell that in a certain town and become known as a crafter of those goods in that town. It's really surprised me how good the economy is here. And the crafting itself is really in depth. It took me a long time to actually fully understand it. It's got a very old school grindy experience. If you play like Eastern games like BDO, some of it will feel kind of familiar, but yeah, you craft something, the better you get it, it can be poor, good, excellent. The more you craft the item, the better chance of getting it to be good or excellent. And then once you get proficient, you can move on to tier 2 gear, which has tier set bonuses and takes a lot more stuff to make. This stuff is a long grind because then it can be upgraded to +1, +2, +3, etc. The crafting system is deep. And gear has durability. So when it runs out, that gear is gone. So the gear grind never stops. You'll always have something to work on. It always keeps the economy going. And you will always constantly need metal, cloth, leather, meaning that all these things will constantly be hunted and constantly be stolen and constantly be fought over. And it feels great. There is one downside here with this system. The fact it's so player driven is great when the game comes out and everyone's playing and there are, thousands of people online. It feels incredible. But you're tying the entire economy of the game to the player count can feel really bad when that player count drops. When you start to need stuff that you can't make yourself and the markets are all empty, there's a problem. When you craft a good piece of gear and there are no vendors, that gear is worthless if you can't use it yourself. So it's kind of a double-edged sword where this is amazing when it's good and it's awful when it's bad. So yeah, that's just a pre-warning. Maybe if you're looking at this review in 6 months and the player count's dropped, bear that in mind. So we've talked a lot about red players and bandits and, devils and wild folk and all these things. So let's talk about the karma system. Unlike some MMOs, being an evil player that PvPs people on site is incredibly punishing in this game. There is a karma system from good, neutral, and evil, and your karma will change based on your actions. Start ganking good players and stealing from them, because this is a hardcore PvP game. You can kill any player on site and take their stuff. You'll get negative karma. And once your name goes red, you have a massive target on you. Players with good karma can come and hunt you down. And they can also apply to be sheriffs and be the good guys that hunt down red players. And your karma will affect how punishing your death will become in the game. A neutral or good player will lose their inventory when they die, but an evil player will start to lose their gear, depending on how bad their karma is. On top of this, if a sheriff kills a red player, they can send them to jail, where they either have to wait out their sentence for like 12 plus hours, or pay a bounty of thousands of gold to the town they've been arrested in. And this just reminds me of like old school MMOs. Like I used to play Conquer Online, if anybody's old enough to remember that. Where there was like a real punishment system for being a red player, for being a evil player. And you had to be good at the game to go red. Like the punishments for getting caught was so bad. You had to be good enough to take that risk that you knew you could fight off people that come for you. And I think it's a really good system, but it is flawed. It's a little flawed in this game. It's probably one of the main issues right now. And if you're watching this in a few months' time, I think it will change because there's a lot of people that are worried about it. Right now, it's just too punishing to be a red player. Unless you've got thousands of gold and you're running around with a group of friends who are all red, you're going to have a bad time. Groups of non-red players will just kill you and get no punishment, and likely one of them will be a sheriff that will send you to jail. So what we're seeing right now is lots of people too scared to flag up as evil, too scared to flag up as red and make that risk. So like the good players, the sheriffs, the good players have all of the benefits and none of the risks, whereas the red players have all of the risks, all of the punishments, and they lose their gear and everything. So it feels right now like there's not much reason to go red. I think they need to maybe make something that the blue players, the good players, have a punishment as well. Like if you want to put someone in jail, if you want to be a sheriff, maybe your gear's at risk. They need to do something to, balance it, because once you get through all of the finding the new skills, finding the new abilities, the gear grind, it is a PvP game. So at the end, this is all about PvP. And if no one's flagging up as red, there isn't much PvP. On the surface, this game looks a lot like Albion, but it plays very differently. Every time you rest at a campfire, you can pick a new loadout of skills. Mages have tons of abilities and, spells in their roster that they can go through. You can be a fire mage build, an ice mage build, a geomancy build. Melees can take an axe with axe skills, hammers, swords, things like that. Or you take a hybrid approach, and the combat feels a lot better than it looks. It's dynamic, it's responsive, it's impactful. When you jump into a pack and cleave them all, and you line up enemies with a big AoE, it feels really good. As you pick your builds, you also have to plan around your enemies. So don't fight fire dragons with fire spells. Certain enemies are weaker to bleeds or blunt or stuns. So you can save presets of different abilities and talent trees and just switch them on the fly with no respec issues, no respec costs. The only things that are limited is changing your core stats, so strength, dexterity, things like that. But your talent trees, your build, all of this stuff can be changed a million times a day. Just go to a campfire and you can change it with any of these presets. The same goes for PvP. With the amount of mobility, dots, stuns, and special effects, PvP has that same high skill ceiling and fast gameplay. You need to have builds with stuns and slows and things that can break them away from you. Melees need gap closers like jumps. Mages need blinks to get away. It does fall into the same issues as most sandbox games, though, where it's a numbers game. It is. If you're playing solo, you're going to have a much harder time in PvP. Players will guild up and run around in zergs. It's definitely harder to find small-scale good PvP in Fraction Online, the same way as it is in every other sandbox game. But the small balanced fights that are happening are incredibly fun. So that's kind of most of the big parts of the game covered here. I could go into detail on the crafting in for like a 30-minute video because it is that in-depth. I could talk about other systems in depth, but I don't want to make this review too long. Overall, let's just cover it. This is a game that looks and plays a lot like Albion, with old school systems straight out of the 90s, but with a progression system that is incredibly rewarding, addictive, and unique. Honestly, I'd say your first 50 hours in this game will be phenomenal. Learning all the spells, traveling around the world in all these new zones, building your first house, leveling your crafting, and just doing everything for the first time in this game is incredible. For the small price of entry of, £20, $25 or whatever it is, it doesn't feel like you're paying much for the amount of content you're getting. I think it's well worth the money, and there's so much to experience here. Where it starts to fall off is once you've done everything for the first time. Once you've got tier 2 gear, you've finished your character, you've built out your character's talents, and you've got all the spells and abilities, and you're just looking for PvP. That's when you might start to get bored and where some of the problems in the game start to come out. But that comes down to the development team and where they take it from here. If you've not followed this game, it originally released last year. People generally said this game is not ready. This is not in a good place. They took it down. It got taken over by Gamigo. They got it back from Gamigo, and now it's being managed by the devs again. And I've got to say, and I can't say this about many games, I have a lot of faith in these developers. There's a level of like genuineness or authenticity to them that you don't really see in many games. They are actively looking for feedback, and they are acting on that feedback to improve the game for the players. Whereas a lot of games you see these days, there's a vision, and if it doesn't fall in the vision, players don't know what they want, right? So that's good to see. On release, there was a couple of issues, and a couple of days later, it was hot fixed. There were some balancing things that need changing. There was some systems that weren't quite working right, and there was a hot fix the same week that fixed them all. When the server needs to go down, they message in the global chat and tell everyone, and they're very open and honest. There's a Discord where they're looking for feedback, and they're acting on that feedback as they get it. I had a bug in my game, like an issue, and they responded in Discord, jumped in and fixed it almost instantly, which is really good. It's almost surprising that there's that close relationship with the game masters and the people working on the game. So I think that's really, really good to see. So should you play Fractured Online? I really think so. If you like this style, there's a lot of people who won't play it because it's top down. There's a lot of people who don't like the look of the combat. And if that's a deal breaker, it's not for you. There's no convincing you there. if you think you could get into it, if you like old school grinds, old school systems where you're going to be clicking trees, you're going to be clicking rocks, you're going to be slow crafting things, this is incredible. This will hook you. The grind and the progression from crafting to going out and hunting all the abilities is 10 out of 10. And I think for the small price of entry, it's 100% worth it. And then whether you want to stick around, join a guild, build up a town, get involved in sieges and play in the end game, the big PvP end game, that's up to you. I think it's incredible. I'm going to be following this game very closely. And I'm very impressed with what they've done so far, how polished and well thought out the systems are, and how fast they're responding to players and changing them. So I think it's a really good game. If you think this looks good, you think you might like it, I would recommend it. If it's a turn off and you can't play it, I wouldn't. There's nothing hidden here. There's nothing nefarious here that makes me say, stay away. And for such a affordable price, I think it's definitely worth your time if you like this style of game. That's the review. Maybe it was a little long because I really wanted to talk about some of the stuff in this game because it's much better than I was expecting. I've really got a positive outlook on this game and I've had a very positive experience so far. So that's the video. I'm going to wrap it up here. If you like this style of honest review, there's no supporter codes anywhere. This is just an honest review. And if you like the style of video, subscribe to the channel for more. I cover lots of different MMOs on this channel. But that's it from me. Let me know what you think if you've tried it, if you tried it when it came out last year, if you tried the re-release now. Let me know what you think. If you're considering it as well, I'd love to hear. So that's it from me. Take care, and I'll catch you in the next one.